Hi everyone, and welcome to our Coping with Crisis. And we are in a series entitled Dealing with Hurt. And this is part 3 of our series in this particular title. And so I want to continue on where I left off from last time and dealing with the hurt and the pain that's in our lives and how to do things correctly in a biblical way, which we talked about last time, is that we got to stop blaming people for how we feel. We talked about that. And then we touched on a little bit, and I want to get into it today, is how to not take things so personal. We tend to, in our pain and our suffering and in the hurt that people give us, to take it so personally that we file a grievance against that person. And what we have to understand is that we have to have a balance in understanding our hurt and our pain. And what I mean by that is you have to balance the personal and the impersonal from the pain that the person inflicted on you. And so what happens to us is, so let's pretend someone does something to you, okay? And they did something, but they had no intentions of hurting you per se. It was just an accident or whatever. They said the wrong thing, whatever. And they had no intentions of hurting you, but you did get hurt in the situation, okay? So in that type of situation, you have to know and read the situation of, well, this person didn't really mean to do that, but I did get hurt. So there's a personal aspect, you were hurt, but the impersonal aspect of the person didn't have the intent to do this to you personally. And so that has to be balanced. Because if it's not, you just say, well, I don't care what they say, they hurt me and they're going to pay for this. And not even realizing you're not taking in all the factors in the situation to where that person wasn't trying to intentionally hurt you. Okay? So things like that happen to us all the time. And all of life is painful when we get hurt, or even the hurt we inflict on ourselves, but we have to understand and evaluate that situation from an impersonal and personal way so we can balance this correctly in our thoughts. And so this is what the Bible's trying to get us to do. This is why the Bible calls us all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. There's people who sin in ignorance, and there's people who sin knowing what they're doing. And there's a distinction in the Bible between the sin of ignorance and the sin that people know what to do. And then there's the sin of omission, and then there's the sin of commission, where people, with omission, people neglect to do something. Maybe you were neglected. Or sins of commission, where someone actually did something to you. So you have to take all that into account when you're evaluating what happened to you. And understand, personally, yeah, it did happen to you. You were affected. When no one's denying that. I don't want anyone to go into denial that you were hurt by a particular thing, and yet you bear the scars. Those are real. And maybe someone did do something deliberately to you, or maybe someone unintentionally hurt you, and you have to know the difference. So the problem with us is we swing the pendulum too far many times, and we swing it all the way, always, it seems to be, to the personal aspect. We make it too personal, and then we do that at the exclusion of the impersonal element of our pain. And so when we do that, when you take it so personal, no, these people were out to get me and this and that. When you do that, you actually start a grievance, and you get stuck in your grievance, and you won't heal from it because you want paybacks. You want revenge. You want them to pay for what they did to you, and you want something that they will never give you. And so you stay stuck, and that's the problem. Well, understand this. We're not trying to remove all responsibility from that person who hurt us, unintentionally or intentionally, okay? We're not trying to do that. They are responsible for their actions. And so we don't want to minimize the legitimate damage they did do to us, okay? But you have to balance it. So let me give you an example. Let's say you were raised by parents that neglected you, okay? Or parents that got a divorce, or parents that did something that you didn't like, okay? Or they had marriage problems or something like that, okay? So in effect, these people, your parents, had their own issues. They had relational deficits, obviously, and your two parents didn't get along, okay? Or your parents were so busy, they never had time for you. They were always working and doing this, doing that, so you were neglected basically by ignoring. But you were provided for in other ways, but they basically ignored your emotional needs, the love that you needed, didn't support you in the things you did, whatever it might be, okay? So let's take, for example, parents that couldn't get along and then divorced. Well, as a child or a teenager, you tend to personalize the whole event that happened. And then you will think, well, why didn't my parents stay together? There must be something wrong with me. Because if there was something wrong with me, I guess that's what caused them to divorce, because I'm feeling personally the pain here. Now, as an adult, you know better to think like that, right? But as a child, you don't. You will personalize everything as a child because your parents can't do any wrong. And so at that point, you say, well, this divorce was about me. There must be something lacking in me. There must be something that I don't meet a standard for my parents to do this, and then me lose my whole childhood because of this. Not understanding that wait a second, that even if your parents divorced, they weren't intentionally trying to hurt you. They just simply couldn't work out their issues or whatever because of their relational deficits. And therefore, they divorced not because of you, but because of their relational problems. Yes, you were affected. Yes, it's personal because you got affected. But they personally didn't try to do this to you and say, I want to ruin my kid's life, and so therefore I'm going to engage in a divorce to ruin my kid's life. But unfortunately, a lot of people think like that. They will think, well, you guys divorced and you ruined my life. And they will put that blame because they're making it too personal. So they have to look back and understand all of us have sinned, all of us have relational deficits, and my parents couldn't work things out. It had really nothing to do with me. Yes, I was affected, but it's really their issue. This wasn't about me. And you see what that does? That balances things. You have a personal aspect, but it's an impersonal thing because your parents didn't really mean to hurt you. But if you swing the pendulum to make it all personal, you will think your parents did that to you, and you will have a grievance against them their whole life, and you will want them to pay you back for that. And that's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen, and you will be stuck in that grievance for the rest of your life. So this is why making things impersonal and personal is so critical in our healing process. We're not minimizing the damage that was done to you. We're just putting it in the right category. Okay? And if it's in the right category biblically, then we can heal from it. Now, there's been situations in my life where people have attacked me. I was at the gym one time, and some older gentleman came up and attacked me verbally by saying, you need to get off this machine. You've been on it too long. And I said, hey, buddy, I just started my sets. I'm going to work this machine for 5 sets, so I'm going to be here for another probably 10, 15 minutes. And what this guy was doing, he was just going around the gym doing whatever he wanted to do and didn't have the patience to wait on anybody. And so I remember I said, hey, dude, you need to back off. And he just wouldn't back off. So I got the manager of the gym and I said, hey, this guy's having a problem. And they basically asked him to leave that day because he was so out of control. And once that all went away, I was still working out, and one of his friends came up to me and said, I'm sorry about him. He just lost his brother and he's not in his right mind. Okay? And so when I looked at that, I could assess it and say, so him attacking me to get off the machine because he wants to get his reps in or whatever was really not about me. He was just upset because his brother had died. So what I had to do is not take it personal, but understand there's a heavy impersonal aspect to it, and therefore I'm able to move on from that. Again, that's just a little example of understanding why people do what they do. Sometimes it's not even about us. Most of the time it's not about us. It's because there's something else going on in their personal life, and that we just become the person in their way. And so you have to understand in an impersonal way why people do what they do. Some people are mentally ill. I'm serious, man. I've asked psychologists, I've asked psychiatrists. I go, how many people, based on a percentage, do you think are functioning out there but need to be on medication because they have some serious mental illness? He goes, about 50% of the population. That seems to be a common number. So I want you to think about that. 50% of the population walking around probably needs to be on some type of antidepressant or whatever because they're having mental issues. That explains why some people act horrible. Okay? So it's not that they're trying to be evil, it's that they can't control themselves. Bipolarism, depression, whatever that might be, shades of schizophrenia, whatever that might be. And then when you start thinking about it, oh, they're not just evil people trying to attack me. They're not thinking straight. You know, most of the homeless, and I think the percentage is about half of them, half of the homeless people are mentally ill and need to be put in an institution where they could get help and be safe. But they're roaming the streets, and I guess we like, governments like them roaming the streets where, instead of being in a hospital where they could get the help. But when you try to talk to them, they're crazy. Yeah, because they're mentally ill. And so they will attack you, say all kinds of crazy stuff, but they're not mentally stable. And so you have to understand that. And so when you go through life, whether you've been hurt in the past by people or you're hurt in the present, you have to start looking at the impersonal aspect of it. What you will realize is the main reason people attack you, again, this is not all the reasons, but it's the main reason, is because they're looking for a scapegoat. They don't know what to do. They're messed up. Their marriages are messed up. Their life is messed up, whatever. And they're going to look to blame someone for their life being messed up. So they go on the attack. And that is the main reason why you and I typically get sinned against, is someone's on the attack. And you and I just got in the way. And so understanding that depersonalizes it. Now let me give you an example of how Jesus depersonalized the attacks that would happen to us. He said, they hate me and they're going to hate you. So when he said that, and he said no servant is above his master, what he was doing is depersonalizing the persecution and the attacks that you and I will get as Christians. Saying, look, it's not about you, they're attacking me. So they attack you because you represent me, but it's really an attack on the Messiah. So what Jesus did, knowing that we needed to have that depersonalization, he said that. And that allows us as believers to be able to endure persecution because we know it's not about us. We don't take it personal. It's about their problems with God. That's what it's really about. So even Messiah did that for us. And the Bible will constantly do that by telling it, look, we all sin. That's a depersonalization. Everyone's going to fail you. People are going to betray you. People are going to do stupid things to you because they all carry a sin nature, and we do too. And unfortunately, what happens to most people is when they are attacked personally, they kind of forget that theology that everyone has sinned and that people have major issues in their life and have undeveloped maturity areas spiritually. They forget that. And this is what happens. They forget that they too have a sin nature, that they too make mistakes, and they forget that that person is spiritually handicapped. So then what happens in our thinking is this. They know better. Now maybe they do, maybe they don't. But we'll put on the moniker on them, they know better, and that shouldn't have happened. They know better. Now, the minute you put that moniker on them, they know better, then you put them in a totally different category. And you put yourself in a different category. You put yourself in a category of pride. And what do I mean by that is because if you believe that you can't make those mistakes, that you don't attack people, that you could be doing the same thing as them or different things, then you have an air of pride. And you will say, how dare they do this to me? How dare they come against me? And so that's an element of pride. And then your pride will then put them in a category of saying they should know better. So when you have that combination, they should know better and how dare they, you're not functioning correctly anymore. Those two things will cause you to have a major grievance against them. A grievance that will never go away because they know better, they knew what they were doing, and I don't make mistakes either. So when that happens, this person is set up to be bitter their whole life, to be angry their whole life. Now you and I could look back and say, well, my parents should have known better. They were adults. Just because someone's an adult doesn't mean they know better. I see a lot of adults who are 50 years old that have the emotional stability of a 13-year-old. They're just not grown up. I see people who have all kinds of mitigating issues that cause them and drive them to do stupid things against other people. I see people who because they refuse to work on themselves, be so defensive you can't tell them anything, you can't correct them. I see people who are afraid of being told what to do. They don't like anyone bossing them around because they have a grievance against a parent that was domineering on them and told them what to do. And so they will not accept authority from anybody. And just, the list goes on. And you think, wow, you know, what really starts becoming very evident is that people have a lot of unhealed pain and they have a lot of brokenness and they've really not gotten over that. And so the people they deal with currently, they end up hurting. They can't deal with them anymore because they're so spiritually handicapped by their grievances. And those grievances will make you spiritually handicapped that any interaction that you have with people, you will end up hurting them because hurt people hurt others. And so, again, this goes deep into the way we think, but we have to make sure we're not thinking in those terms and being humble that you could say, I could do the same thing. I've done stupid things in my life, which brings us down. And just to say, they appear that they have some major issues in their life that are messed up. And the reason they can't function correctly in a relationship is because they're so messed up. There's a lot of issues going on in their life and that hasn't been resolved. And I'm not meaning to denigrate anybody because we're all messed up. That's the idea on our part, that we're all messed up. That brings humility. But to understand that when they attacked us, it came out of things they haven't worked on. It came out of issues they have been dealing with, or issues that have been there, but they haven't dealt with their whole life. And so they would do this to anybody. That's the whole point. They would do this to anybody, not just you. So that makes it impersonal, and that brings humility to it. The third thing I want to point out then is another principle that you have to use and incorporate in handling pain or hurt. Okay? The thing you have to keep telling yourself, and comes from the Bible, that pain and hurt happens to all. It is universal. And that's what the book of Job tries to say. That's what the fall is trying to say. That's what the New Testament, Old Testament, all are trying to say is that pain happens to everyone. Even the biblical characters experience pain and loss, right? People hurt them. And so all of them suffered like us. We're all suffering together. It's a common human condition. And so the problem is we don't think like that. We think that because we're taking it personal, that we're personally being mistreated and no one else has been mistreated like us. I know it sounds crazy, but we start thinking like that. No one's been treated like this. I can't believe people are treating me like this. I can't believe I'm having to go through this. This is crazy. This doesn't happen to other people. That kind of thought like that. You then take out the universality of pain and hurt, and then you make it indicative just to your life. And all of a sudden, this is happening to you and no one else. And that is when you start distorting reality. That will really mess you up. And so you have to keep telling yourself, what's happening to you is not unique. It's happened thousands and thousands of times to other people. And the Bible is telling us that pain and hurt are a typical part of life. It's part of the fall. So we're not unique. We're not special. This is not just happening to us. There's probably a dozen other people in the church having the same issue you're having. In fact, I can attest to that. In the counseling I do, I can say whatever this person's going through, I know 20 other people who are going through the same thing in just different ways. And that's the universality of pain and hurt. It is universal. And so a lot of times when you're talking to somebody, and you can tell that they're really getting into this, I'm the only one suffering, no one else is suffering, you have to pull them back out of that to see that it's universal. Because if it becomes about them, it will really make things personal, and therefore they will get stuck. Because they're the only ones in pain, no one else is. And no one knows their pain like they do. And so that becomes a problem. So those are the three things I wanted to bring out today. We're going to continue this the next time. We'll get into number 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and other things still in order to handle our pain, handle our hurt biblically. But we need to chew on those 3 principles that I gave today. Try to think about and reanalyze the things that happen to you, and try to put them in these biblical categories, okay? And what you'll start doing if you do that is that you'll be able to release a lot of the grievance, a lot of this ongoing hurt that's happening to you, and you will be able to start setting yourself free by the truth of the situation. And that's all what we want. We want to be set free by the truth. We want to get free of the grievances, free of this. We don't want to keep feeling hurt and pain from something that happened 30 years ago. I don't want to feel that anymore. Well, the only way to do it is start applying biblical principles and truths to what happened to you. And then eventually, through the process of time and truth working itself through you, you will be set free from it. Okay? So we'll continue this next time. Join us next time in part 4 as we study how to handle hurt and pain. Okay? God bless you. We'll see you next time.